Oh, so for those of you that know me, this will be a little bit repetitive, but lots of you don't know me. So I would just wanted to introduce myself a little bit. So my name's Sophie Stevenson. I have been teaching and living and working in this beautiful world of the thinking environment for about 15 years now. So before that, I have kind of an eclectic background, always in leadership. But after university, I was an officer in the Royal Navy. I've done a strategic leadership role in a really big organisation out in Australia, which is where I lived for 10 years. And then when I left there and came back to the UK, I decided to set up on my own, and I found this way of working. So I've got two little children. I've got a little boy called Jem, who's 7, and a little girl, Una, who is 4. And I work for myself. But all of my work is around this beautiful work of a lady called Nancy Klein, and is known as the thinking environment. So Nancy, if you haven't come across her yet, 20 years ago wrote a book called Time to Think, and it was that book that really started my journey into finding out about this work. And if any of you had known me, and some of you did, 15 years ago, I was the exact opposite of ease. And I think that was probably one of the things that first attracted me to this, is I was living my life, in a real sense of everything was urgent and everything was important, and I was working hard and I talked fast, and everything was very busy. And I think part of that was just growing up. I was promoted quite young, and I was in a role that I loved, but I think also that urgency came from a sense of me not feeling enough. And so I was driving my behavior. I was coming from a place of not feeling like I was enough, so I was doing more and more. And so I always think we teach what we most need to learn, and I think my real learning in the last 15 years has been around ease. And I always think that's the starting point for my journey, and I think for a lot of people's journeys in the thinking environment, is that we want more ease. We want to be able to enjoy our life and enjoy our work. And so ease is the absence of urgency, the absence of stress and urgency in our life. And I think one of the things I said I'd cover is, like, why is ease not easy? Because it's not. It really isn't, is it? And I often ask myself, like, what is it we're all so busy doing? Because we are all really busy doing. We're in, the grip of a bigger, faster, more society, which is quite draining, and it makes us often feel like however much we do, it isn't enough, and we never get to the end of our to-do lists. And so the component of ease, so this one of the elements of the thinking environment is about ease, and ease advocates kind of like for a new way of being. So it's a conscious choice to discard the urgency, so we get things done in a way that is nurturing and inspiring and more nourishing to us. So ease isn't about an absence of doing, it's just the way that we do them. And what I found is that ease is an internal choice. So it's something that I have to constantly practice, that if I want to think well, I have to cultivate. So it's not something that I just get to be, it's something I've actually got to consciously bring myself back into, because often it can feel stressful and overwhelming. So it's not about denying that there's pressure. It's not about denying that there's a lot to do. It's not about negating how many things many of us are trying to do. But it's about facing this fully and consciously choosing how we want to be when we're doing all of these things. But it's not easy. Like, it's really not easy. I think there are cultural and societal pressures that almost reward busyness, busyness and getting things done, and that kind of franticness that we are surrounded by. But we also get addicted. We get addicted to the distractions, and we get addicted to the busyness, and we get addicted to being, in many places at once. And there are, entire industries that are consciously pulling us away from ease, you know, and they're designed for distraction, they're designed for urgency, they're designed not to let you help you necessarily think. And that's not, I don't think there's anything wrong, like that's their job, you know, that's what they're trying to do. But I think for us, it's about working out what role we want those things to play in our life, and how we want those things to, what role we want them to play. I also think that we get so used to this almost sense of distraction and being fragmented all the time, that in those rare moments when we actually do get to pause, it can feel odd. You know, it almost feels too slow. It feels like we're not contributing. You know, it can almost feel, what's the word? A little bit fractured. Like I can't get to the word, but it's like there's just something we get so used to it. And I also think, so there are all these external challenges, but if speaking for myself, I think actually what most stops me from having ease is the untrue and limiting assumptions that I make about myself. And so assumptions are things that we take as true and real, largely without evidence. And if I'm honest, like when I ask myself, like, what am I assuming that is stopping me being at ease? What am I assuming that's stopping me at being at ease, even when I've got lots to do? Often what will come up is that, and I thought about this last night, is that I can only look after my own needs after I've looked after everyone else's. Or once I've got everything done, then I get to be at ease. Or doing more means I'm contributing more. And when I stop and really think about those, often they're not true. And so I think there is a role in the external environment, but I think there's also a role in the internal environment that we have for ourselves about that. And I often think, if I'm so busy doing, have I actually lost the meaning? Like, have I lost what it is I most, you know, what's most important, you know, when I'm so busy? And so I'd like you, and again, we won't do it now, but just to ask yourself, you know, what are you assuming that is stopping you from being at ease, even amidst the busyness? So what are you assuming that is stopping you from being at ease, even amidst the busyness? And I might just pause and see if anyone wanted to jump in or share anything, ask anything. Okay, I'll keep going. And what sorry, Poonam.
No, I was just going to say, we often judge ourselves and then project that judgment onto others, and then assume that other people are judging us negatively and almost invite unease.
Thank you. Deb.
Really resonated with me when you talked about how being busy is addictive. And I think that's definitely something I do. I find that, you know, I'm constantly creating lists of things I need to do, whether it's in the house or at work, because then it makes me feel like I'm important and valued, and, you know, and the pandemic actually has taught me to stop, bizarrely, because we couldn't do a lot. But I think that's a really important point you made there, and I really, really like it.
And I will say, but it is, whenever people, you know, if you say to people, like, how are you? Often the first thing they'll say is, I'm really busy. And it's almost like we wear it as a badge of honor. There's a chap called Oliver Berkman who did a really interesting short podcast series on the epidemic of busyness, and I'll link it, I'll share it with you. But it was so fascinating around, actually we're in this culture that is like, makes that equation. So if I'm busy, it means I'm important. If I'm busy, it means I'm doing stuff. And I think one of the things that the thinking environment really encourages us is us to think about is like, Am I busy doing the right things? Am I busy doing things that add meaning, that are of value or of most value? And just taking that time to make sure that we're consciously and intentionally doing in a way that isn't stressed and urgent and adrenaline fueled. So what I found, and let me just, what I found, and this will either resonate with you or it might be something you want to explore, is that it's impossible for ease to exist without boundaries. And by boundaries, I use the definition that Brené Brown uses, which is what's okay and what's not okay for me. So what's okay and what's not okay. But it's really hard to have a sense of ease when I'm not clear on these, or when my boundaries get compromised or pressured. And I think I've learned the hard way that no one else can put boundaries in for me. So boundaries are owned by us and they have to be maintained by us. And work, like there's always going to be more work to do. And there's always going to be more things I want to do. But it's about working out, well, what do I most want to do? And what do I most want to focus on? And what I found is that a really good indication that my boundaries have been crossed is when I'm starting to feel resentful or angry or anxious. And so often I can sense my boundaries have been crossed, not in a cognitive, rational way, but it's from a feeling. So I get a feeling of anxiety. I get a feeling of that kind of adrenaline sort of coursing through my veins. And so I think it's really interesting to note where and with whom you feel that, or whether there's certain roles that you fulfill or certain pieces of your work where, and then just checking in and thinking, well, actually, are my boundaries clear? Or am I clear here on what's okay and what's not okay? And this is the first place I go. So when I'm starting to feel a lack of ease, so am I saying yes to too many things? Am I focusing on what's most essential? Am I making decisions which are aligned to my values? And often it's really quick to emerge that I'm actually trying to do too much, in which case I don't do anything well. Or I've said yes to things when really it would have been better to say no nicely. And what I tend to do when I'm feeling a lack of ease, the first thing I do, and I've done this for years now, is I'll notice the feeling. So I notice, and again, the feeling might be different for you, but it's like I notice that I'm starting to feel a lack of ease. And I will carve out for myself 10 or 15 minutes. And I get a blank piece of paper, or you might do it on typing it in somewhere. And I just write down everything. I capture everything that is in my head. So all the little things and the big things and the practical things and the things with the kids. And I almost think of it as like one of those old fashioned kitchen cabinets where it's got different drawers. And so I might pull out the drawer, for the children and think, like, what are all the things I've got in my head about the kids and work or projects? And I go through and I just do a brain dump. I get everything out of my brain and onto paper. I don't filter it. I don't make sense of it. I don't try and prioritize it. I just get it out of my head. And what this allows you to do is almost just get some space in between your thoughts, because when it's in our minds, it's really hard to differentiate what's urgent and what's important. I've been doing this for years, but the first time I did this, I had over 300 things on my list. And I was like, oh, no wonder I'm feeling, slightly overwhelmed, because trying to keep all of that in my head and keep on top of it is almost impossible. So I would really encourage you to do a brain dump, anytime you're feeling slightly, lacking in ease. And the joy with these, it's so simple. Like you can't do it wrong. You don't need to go on a course. You don't need a special journal. You just get a piece of paper and you try and get out what's in your head and make some clarity from that. And why it's important, like, whilst there's a bit of me thinks actually ease just feels good, it's like it's almost a feeling, isn't it? We feel good when we're at ease. But when our minds are calm, So when our minds and our bodies are calm, it's almost like that little bit of our brain, you know, that primitive bit of our brain that's always scanning for safety, gets to just relax for a moment. You know, it gets to just know, okay, well, I'm doing this and it's safe and I'm okay. And when we don't feel threatened, so when we don't have adrenaline and stress in our systems, we're able to think more clearly and we're able to solve problems far more effectively. Because when we're stressed, and that's almost what urgency is, you know, that it manifests in us differently, but it's actually that kind of adrenalized stress. When we're stressed, we become more tunnel visioned. So we get much more black and white in our thinking. We simplify complexity. It's almost like we can't absorb any more information. And so we look for easy fixes. We look for generalizations, you know, we avoid and we can't see nuance. And so we're far more likely then to interrupt ourselves, interrupt others, and distract ourselves with coping mechanisms, because it's almost like we're at capacity, you know, the glass is full. And so to take in any more information feels really, really hard. And so ease actually improves the quality of our thinking. It's, you know, I love ease because it's presenced by an absence, isn't it? So we know ease is present often when there's an absence of rush or tension or stress or urgency. And so it's important for us, but it's also really important for the people that we're with. So whether that's our children, our work colleagues, if we can bring a sense of ease to the environments we're in, other people will be able to think more clearly and more spaciously and deal with more complexity. And I've always found, and you know, I'd love to be proven wrong on this, but the quality of our thinking is always a reflection of our internal state. So when I'm feeling calm, easeful, spacious, my thinking will reflect that. So it will be expansive, it will be creative, it will be imaginative, you know. Whereas when I'm stressed and I'm constricted and I'm tired and I'm exhausted, my thinking is in this like little narrow place. And so sometimes what I recognize when I'm not at ease is it's not the right time to be thinking about things, because I might well get a result or I might be able to do things, but the quality of that probably might not be particularly high. And that's why we say, you know, ease creates space, it creates possibility, it creates calmness, it creates innovation, and urgency destroys those things. So it's not to say that we can't think well, we can't think when we're stressed, we can't think in a place of urgency. It's just often the quality of that isn't as good as it will be when we're calm. The other really important thing I think to say about ease is we feel safer. We feel safer when we're with people who exude a sense of ease, when they're not urgent and rushed and stressed. So we feel safer when we're with people that are at ease. And because of that, we get to breathe, you know, we get to relax, we get to be ourselves. And because of that, we get to think about more challenging problems in a more gentle and easeful way. So I'll just pause there in case there are any questions or anything anyone just wanted to share before I move on. I'll keep going.
Sorry, can I speak, Sophie?
Yes, please do, Kubrat.
In the same way, if somebody is definitely not at ease, like my mother-in-law whose sister's very poorly and she bangs and clangs the dishes if she's washing up, like I call it her bat out of hell mode. So she's giving off a very bad energy that I can't even be around. So I will go to another room or pop outside. So like if someone's at ease, it's easier to be around them. And if someone is not at ease, I guess it's not easy to be around them.
Yeah. And I think sometimes, Kimberly, it's like, I know for myself, when I'm not at ease, I have a default. So my default when I'm not at ease is I get really task focused. So I just default back into, I just want to get stuff done. And yet when I stop and really think about that, it's like, is that really what, like, do I just want to get things done more than I want to be a present mum or make people feel valued? It's like, of course not. And so I think we have our default. So like your mother-in-law's default might be she might be frustrated or something. And so her default is to kind of bang and crash. And I think sometimes it's just, for me, it's been really aware of when I'm defaulting back into my pattern of behavior, and then catching myself then to say, oh, is this actually what's most important? And often it's not. And then I think, okay, right, what can I do to get back to ease? Colin, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, thank you. I'm amazed at what's coming up about ease. I mean, it's a simple word, and yet there is so much there. But what I wanted to say was that ease is always there. I sense that ease is always there, that we layer all this stuff on top, our busyness and addictions and things like that. And so I wonder about it being the default, where we should go, where we could go if we stopped everything else. I know you've said that default is going to be this, but I'm wondering, is that a question? Is it a distraction? Is it about not boundary, or an obstacle in the way of us actually getting to our true position, which is at ease? That's my thoughts.
Yeah, and I'm going to sit with that. I'll just, and so I noticed somebody else had their hand up. Did you want to?
Yeah, it's me, Eleanor.
Hello.
Hi. I was just reflecting on what you were saying about ease and when we're not at ease, and the kind of cultural, external influences that encourage us not to be at ease and to be busy. And I wondered what your thoughts were on leaders who, I guess, really channel that stress into creating this sense of urgency for everybody else. And they're seen often in organizations as very driven, as getting things done, as, real kind of having really high resilience. But that seems at odds with what we're saying in terms of ease.
Yeah, and I think my experience of this, Eleanor, has always been, it's always possible to work from a place of urgency, and that, and yet, is it sustainable? And is it getting the best results from people? And I think often that pace, again, I worked in that world of, we worked at a high pace, and yet I look back and I think, actually, were we really doing the best work we could, or were we just doing busy work? And I think a lot of it, again, it's that, what's it driven by? Is it driven by a need to, a sense of lack? It's like, I've got to do more to be more. And that's also not to say, and it's there will be, there are leaders that will be like that, and it's almost then, what do we do within that environment to resource ourselves, knowing that it's probably not going to bring the best out in us? But it's short term. I think it's like, we can all work like this for a period, and I think somebody just said in the comments, it's like, actually, ultimately, it's not good for anyone to have stress running through their system all the time, and it's not sustainable over a long time.
It isn't, but I think it becomes a badge of honor almost. I think that some leaders get to the position they're in because of their ability to almost channel that stress and continually work at that high level. And I'm with you. I don't see that it's a long-term strategy. I don't see it getting the best work out of people. But unfortunately, a lot of business cultures almost encourage it or see it as a strength, I think.
The other, my other thought on that is, like, we're all individuals, organizations are groups of people who come together, and what I found is never underestimating the impact you can have, even within those crazy cultures. Like, actually, we can still consciously choose how we are and how we respond to it. But it's not easy. John, did you want to have a?
Yeah, I was just going to add something in on that, Sophie. I think I really take Eleanor's point, but I mean, both of us share military backgrounds, and I think there are times where actually you can be at ease in amongst the busyness of everything else, and you are that point of calm around around which a lot can rotate. So that you can still be in a very dynamic and involved fast operational environment, but if you bring a certain calm to it, then that radiates outwards, and you can bring that ease. So I think, to Eleanor's point, yeah, we need leaders who actually are perhaps trained to channel that capacity to deal with all the stresses, but for them to display it in a different way than the way that they're displaying it currently. Does that make sense?
And I think that's the is like being at ease doesn't mean not getting things done. Being at ease doesn't mean negating all of the that busyness. It's like there is a lot to get done, but it's that, how do we bring a sense of ease to that? So how can we bring a sense of ease to that? So I would just carry on. I'm just going to try and work out why. Let me have a look. Sorry, I'm just trying to fix the. There we go. There we go. So I suppose relating to this, ease is for me, and I think for all of us, like, it's a practice. It's not a destination. Like, it's not a one-off thing that you do. It's something that you are. And so, as John was saying, it's like, how do we live in this busy world? How do we work in these fast-paced teams and still have practices that bring us back and ground us into what is most important and reflect our values and reflect who we most want to be? And so for me, that's why I talk about it as we have to cultivate ease, consciously and intentionally cultivate ease. And it will be different for each of us. So for me, when I'm really feeling anxious, so I would do something like a brain dump exercise, but I also have practices around mindfulness and yoga and running and having time on my own that really allow me to come back to what is most important. And so when I'm starting to feel frantic, I'm starting to feel pressured, it's almost like these bring me back. And they're practices because I do them even when I am at ease. I do them all the time, so that when it gets hard, I've got them to fall back on. And so, not today, but I think it's really worth thinking about, like, what does bring you back into a place of ease? Like, what are the practices? What are the things that you need to be present in your life to be at your best? And I love that question, like, what do you need? Because it's not for anyone else. It's like, what is it you most need to be at ease? And then trying to find a small thing, what's a small thing you could start doing that would allow you to have that as a more present element in your life. And it's been really interesting, just as I was setting up for this call, and I do laugh because I think every month, whatever the theme is, seems to be the theme I most need. And so I haven't been at ease the last week, and there's been a lot going on, and anyway, so there was a lot going on, and there's lots of moving parts, lots of things outside my control. And what I found was all of the things that I'm teaching you, it's like, oh yeah, this is what I do, but I have to do them, so I consciously this week carved out time to do some of the things that are really important to me, rather than just get wrapped up in it. And so it's like, that's why I think it's a practice. It's like, it's just something that you when it's out of balance, when you feel off kilter, you think, okay, settle back into my practices. And a little bit to Colin's point, I think this is slightly related, is you'll know what your practices are because they'll feel good. So for you, it might be being in nature or gardening or walking or being with a friend, but you'll know because it feels right. And so I wouldn't try too hard to think about, you know, it's a feeling state you're looking for. So when do you feel at ease, and try and cultivate more of that in your everyday life. And then I did say that one of the things I'd talk about was sometimes the best thing you can do to help others is not to do anything at all. And I had quite a few comments from the email on this. And I think one of the things that stops us being at ease and is that we want to help, and we want to be of service, and we want to support other people. And because of that, we say yes to lots of things, and we get involved in lots of things. And what I found is that often what can most help other people is creating the conditions for them to think for themselves. And ease is one big part of that. So most of the time, what people most want is for you to be with them in a particular way, you know, in a calm, gentle, easeful way, so they can think for themselves about what they need and want to do. And so if you want to be of help, if you want to be of service, I think the best thing we can often do is not to do for, it's to change that to being with. So being with people so they can truly think for themselves. You know, it's to be able to pay attention to what's most important with an open heart, and with ease. So, you know, people can get to a better result in less time, you know, and that's again one of the paradoxes of being at ease, is people think we don't have time. You know, I won't have time. I'm too busy. And, you know, I always say we have so much time to do the wrong things. We have so much time to prioritize other people, you know, things that don't matter. And yet are we finding time to do things that really do matter? And then with I just wanted to share a beautiful quote from a teacher called Parker Palmer, who I really love his writing, and I've paraphrased this, but he says people aren't problems to be fixed, you know, and he says that the human soul doesn't want to be advised or fixed. It wants to be witnessed. It wants to be seen and heard and comprehended exactly as it is. And it's that kind of ease that allows people to solve their own problems, and realize how resourceful they already are. And yet I think so often when we think about helping people, we think about doing for them. So yeah, I think, what does it mean to help? For me, what it means to help is to create the conditions for people to help themselves. And what I found is I can only give what I've got. And so if I'm not at ease, it's really hard for me to cultivate ease for other people. If I'm stressed and anxious in my own life, that will filter out to the people I'm with. And so I think more often than not, coming back to a sense of ease for myself is often the most generous and selfless thing I can do. So any thoughts or questions before we start closing?
Sophie, can I just share something quickly with you? This was just something that happened recently, and it made me think about it again with you focusing on ease. And this might sound the weirdest thing to say, but is being at ease with things that cause or are ambiguous or create uncertainty or lack of clarity with other people. Often if you can step back from it and almost be comfortable with the not knowing, or not clear where a conversation is going, and just sit with it and let it roll, that sometimes that sense of ease can be so powerful. Because what I've learned from coaching, as in being coached, is often when you're on the cusp of something feeling uncomfortable, is just when something really interesting is about to happen. But you have to be easy with it to allow it to develop into something, which might sound all a bit counterintuitive, but it's being easy with ambiguity or uncomfortableness, whether it's yours or someone else's. Actually, I think that's really, really powerful as well.
It's true, and often, like we like feeling in control. You know, we like certainty. We like a plan. You know, most people like, and I think, you know, this year's been a wonderful demonstration of actually. It's not real, is it? Really, you know, we're all just there's huge uncertainty, and always, and we pretend there's not, you know, and but I think it's how can we cultivate ease when we don't know, and that to me is why it's a practice, Liz. You know, it's not, and I think that's been my greatest learning over the last 15 years is, you know, 15 years I tried to control everything, and I thought I had to know everything, and I thought I could fix everything. And whereas now, and I don't think it's just I've got older, you know, or less capable, it's just I think you realize that actually there is so little, you know, there is so much uncertainty, and yet can I be with people in a way that still reflects to them, I think you matter and I matter, and we'll sit with this together. So, but yeah, it's great. Oh, so what I wanted to do is I'm gonna just put you back into breakout rooms so you can have a moment. I'll put you with who you were with before, hopefully, just to share maybe what you found most valuable, or is there one thing you'd like to try as a result of this? Because what I'm always aware is our hour will finish and all that urgency will come rushing back in. And so if you don't get a moment now to capture it, it can be really hard to. So let me just take off this record.